In this video, I'm going to talk about, in regards to workers' comp, Ohio workers' comp, this thing called MMI, and that stands for Maximum Medical Improvement. And the reason why I'm going to talk about it is because I just had a hearing this week in regards to the employer wanting to find the injured worker MMI, and this is the kind of discussion I had with this client. It tends to come up with about everybody who's found MMI or the possibility of being found MMI. So bottom line for you is if you're receiving temporary total disability, then if you're found to have reached maximum medical improvement for the, like, let's say you're receiving temporary total disability for the allowed physical conditions. So let's say you have a lumbar sprain and you've received TT for a bit of time, and then you have a finding of maximum medical improvement for that lumbar strain. The effect on your claim for you anyways is that it will terminate your temporary total disability compensation checks. So that's kind of a concern for a lot of people. If they've been receiving temporary total disability and then they're found MMI, then it terminates it. So, but what does that mean? Because people kind of get this. They go, and they're like, what do they mean I've reached maximum medical improvement? I'm still in pain or whatever. And this is where it could get kind of a little bit messy, I guess. But so what happens is, after about 90 days, you'll have, or thereabouts, you'll have what's called a 90-day extended disability exam. So this would be an independent medical exam, and either the BWC will send you to this exam, or if it's a self-insured claim, they'll send you to an exam. And it's just a quick exam. Usually, from what I understand, I've never gone through one, but talking with clients and stuff, they say that they're pretty perfunctory. And depending on what the body part affected by the injury, that's what they'll exam. So, if it's the lower back, they'll examine your lower back. There's these different little tests they'll do, and then they'll write their report. They'll review the medical that's been going forward, and they'll write the report and they'll say, hey, this person has reached maximum medical improvement. They've had this treatment. They've had this physical therapy, these injections, X, Y, and Z, and therefore it's reached a treatment plateau. And so the confusion, I think, for a lot of people, though, is they're like, well, I'm not better. And so maximum medical improvement does not necessarily mean you've returned to your pre-injured self, right? It just means that for the condition that you're receiving TT for, so for example, a lumbar sprain, you received all the treatment that's reasonably going to be authorized essentially for that condition, and you're not necessarily getting better, nor are you getting worse. So you're kind of at a you've reached a plateau is what the term they use. So yeah, people they'll be like, well, I'm still having issues. Well, that doesn't mean that you've been healed completely. So and then things that can be used to argue against the finding of an MMI, something that we would say at a hearing is, let's say you have a lumbar strain, and then you have a diagnostic's been requested, an MRI, and then you're going to have a consult. That may prevent a finding of MMI because it tends to show like, hey, this person's still treating, for this back thing, and they're trying to figure out what is wrong. And so, it stands to reason that their condition, there's further treatment, there's a treatment plan in place, and we want to figure out what's up. It could be they have a disc herniation or something. So that might stop it. But if you've had a lumbar strain, if you've had an MRI of your lower back and it's essentially normal, and or you've had some, like a disc bulge, but it's it's not symptomatic disc bulge necessarily, and you've had your consult, then you might be found MMI. So again, MMI doesn't mean you're healed. But it's the idea is that to receive temporary total disability, you have to be temporarily and totally disabled. And so once a condition has reached this maximum medical improvement, it's no longer temporarily disabling. It's there's a permanency, and so because your temporary total disability is supposed to be granted, it's temporary. That's the key word. If it's reached a state of permanency, then you're not entitled to TT anymore for that condition. So now, if you have, like, let's say you have a concussion with or without loss of consciousness, you have a lumbar sprain, and then you have a right shoulder sprain, and then you've subsequently you've had diagnostics and you've had consult, and they're like, okay, this person has a rotator cuff tear, and you get the rotator cuff tear. You might be found MMI for the lumbar and or the concussion, but if you're still treating for the rotator cuff tear, regardless of whether you've found MMI for the other conditions, you still have a condition that's temporarily and totally disabling you, the rotator cuff tear. So you would still be entitled to TT in that regard. It could be that you have, and this is something that happens sometimes as well, is you have both the physical conditions allowed in the claim and you have psych conditions allowed in the claim. And so if you are found, let's say you're being certified for both conditions, both the physical by your physical doctors and for the mental by the psychologists or whoever's treating you for that, you could be found MMI for the physical conditions, but if you're still temporarily and totally disabled for the mental conditions, the psych conditions, then you'll still be entitled to temporary total disability. So, but yeah, bottom line is, at some point, every condition is gonna reach this MMI state. It's just inevitable. So, I mean, it's not entirely rare that people will be on temporary total disability for 2, 3, 4 years. But at a certain point in time, if you've had, like, let's say you had a rotator cuff tear, you've had the rotator cuff tear surgery to repair that tear, you've had the physical therapy, you've had additional physical therapy. Again, it's a serious injury, and maybe you still have some pain, but even if the doctors doesn't have any further treatment, they don't want to do an additional surgery, they don't want to do any more injections, or they've requested injections and those have been denied by the managed care organization, and they've been denied at hearing. Again, at some point, even though I understand you still have pain in that shoulder, it doesn't mean that you're going to get temporary total disability forever. So you will be found, for every condition, it will be found in MMI. And so if you're so injured that you've been knocked out of the ability to work at all, right, then the next step would be to try vocational rehabilitation. And if you do that, the vocational rehabilitation, and you are able to get back into work, awesome. But if you're either ineligible or not feasible for vocational rehabilitation, well, more important, if you're not feasible or you do it and it fails, then the next step would be to see if filing for a permanent total disability would be appropriate for you. So, but here we go. So if you found MMI, the next step would be you're going to wait. Your attorney is going to wait, or you're going to wait 26 weeks after the last payment of TT, and then they're going to file something called the C92 award, which I've talked about in other videos. And that basically is kind of recognizing that, hey, you've had all this treatment, you have these conditions allowed in the claim, and we're going to recognize that you have some permanency, and so for that, on that basis, we're going to assign a percentage of a permanent, however you're permanently impaired from that condition, we're going to pay you for that. So So it's not all doom and gloom, but yeah. So that's what MMI is. It doesn't mean that you're totally healed. It doesn't mean that you're totally fixed. And if you're MMI, you can, through new and changed circumstances, can be placed back on temporary total disability. But generally, that's what it means. So, again, things that will argue against defining MMI is if you have treatment that's outstanding. So if your doctor's recommended injections, surgery, diagnostics, and those things are going to get authorized, or it's likely they'll get authorized, then that would be an argument against defining MMI. So, but as long as you have that outstanding treatment and your doctor's continuing to certify you in the Medco 14, then it's possible you will continue receiving TT. But so that's the thing. We have these hearings, and that's the argument we're making, that this person hasn't reached MMI. And some people they haven't, and some people they have. It's just whatever the facts are in that person's situation. But But again, bottom line is, and really the thing to take away is, MMI doesn't mean you're healed. So just so that's clear. So hopefully this has helped enlighten you a little bit about maximum medical improvement and what that means. And as always, if you have questions, concerns, comments, if you need an attorney, get an attorney. Come to us, Malek & Malek. That's what we do. So it's compassionate, aggressive legal representation for your work injury. And so otherwise, have a nice day or evening, and hopefully you're doing okay.